apprenticeship is the way to go. We need to train people and pay people to learn. And then once people get in the trades, absolutely, you have salaries that are, in the low 70s is a kind of entry level, and people really go up from there. And you get pensions, benefits, 401k, the stuff that we just don't see in so many service industries, contract positions, like these things that help folks throughout their whole life are falling away in so many industries, whereas in the trades still hold that people need to have retirement. You can't actually use your body this hard until the day you die. You have to be able to retire. You have to be able to do something else because your body does start to break down. And so I think that the trades are really still holding. Workers need access to benefits. They need access to 401k. They need access to strong healthcare. So those, I think the salary is a big issue. You definitely can make a great salary, but the other workplace protections that are still in place in the trades are what I think really makes it a strong career at this point.
Yeah, this is why I love this model. Going to college and graduating with $50,000 to $250,000 in student loan debt is restrictive. It limits your options once you graduate, where you can go, where you can live, what you can do, the type of lifestyle that you can have. We've sort of created this sort of this perversion of the benefits of going to college and getting the professional or stereotypical career or job. Whereas by getting into trades, one, the cost of the education isn't as restrictive. And much of that is being subsidized when you get into the apprenticeship, 15 or would you say 17 to $27 an hour from an apprenticeship. There are people who have a full-time job who would love to get paid $25 an hour, and they aren't. And many of those people have gone to school, gone to college. But then also, I think there's always this perception of the plumber or the mechanic, they can't be earning that much money. But you said that the starting salary is $70,000, and I know that the happiness salary is up for debate right now, but that's been pretty consistently for a decade. It's been about $75,000. So you're starting out with your first job and you're already making just $5,000 shy of the happiness salary. That's a huge opportunity. But then to your point, the sky's the limit, right? I mean, there, especially if you're going to start your own business, you could be earning, multiple six figures by doing your by doing your trades job.
Absolutely, absolutely. And also, of course, for people that are interested in starting their own business, that's its own education entirely as to what it takes to run a business, which I find very interesting and I love. I've started a couple different businesses. And I find you learn all sides of it. You learn from insurance to licensing to payroll to taxes. And so I think that, the trades really avail folks of a lot of different options. You can just do that kind of apprenticeship, get paid well, go home route, or you can grow in the company, or you can start your own. So it has a lot of flexibility that, I think people don't necessarily recognize all the time about the trades.
Yeah. And I think another great opportunity with the trades is similar to the parallel to what we're seeing in financial services and financial planning, in that all of these baby boomers are dying. There's already a dearth, like you said, of trades workers as well as financial planners. And then there's going to be an even bigger dearth because all these boomers are retiring. And now after the pandemic, it seems like they're retiring even more quickly. So the law of supply and demand says that if there's all these jobs that need to be filled, it's a great opportunity for LGBTQ folks to go right in there and say, we'll take these opportunities and we'll glam them up and we'll start earning six figures ourselves each.
Absolutely. Yeah. And really shifting the industry. And what I often say for, folks that are anxious about the trades culture is, we absolutely will go in there and change it. And employers are going to be forced to change because demographics of the United States are rapidly changing. We know that by 2042, white people will no longer be the majority. And the rates of youth that are coming out as queer, non-binary, transgender are just going up and up. And I think that really speaks to representation and language and the internet and youth being able to see themselves and say, I am beautiful, this is who I am. And so as the United States demographics change, the trades are going to have to change. The trades are very integral part of the United States economy, and to adapt and learn and be a part of the economy and ongoing, they're going to have to create inclusivity, and it'll be one way or another. It'll either be, which we see a lot of employers working towards DEI. We see a lot of employers approaching us saying, we want training, we want best practices for hiring LGBTQ workers. A lot of employers really do want to change. And the ones that don't, our anti-discrimination laws are getting stronger and stronger. And people deserve to be in the trades, and LGBTQ people should be in the trades. And if the employer won't change, then they should access the rights that they have in this country in terms of filing a complaint with the EEOC, Human Rights Commission, or seeking an attorney. I always hope they're going to change willingly, but.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm wondering, are you seeing some trades evolve more quickly than others right now? Are there some that are, more queer than others?
It's true. There actually are. I see a lot of electricians, electrician unions approach us about getting training. The industry is known to be a little less misogynistic, the specific electrical and electricians union. And we also see construction really trying to change. I think it's really the need for workers is first and foremost. But that's where we're getting a lot of our kind of folks are interested in, how do we get more workers? How do we become more inclusive? I think, unfortunately, we see a lot of misogyny very entrenched. And for example, Boilermakers and iron workers, the culture is just so entrenched in kind of archetypes of masculinity, misogyny. It can be much more difficult to kind of break through, but we absolutely have members of Reckoning Trade Project who are iron workers, who are out trans women in iron work, being iron workers, which is an incredible thing at this point. It's really speaks to the power and beauty of queer and trans folks, I think, to endure in these situations and workplaces that are very hostile, but say, I absolutely deserve to be here. I'm going to be out loud and proud.
Yeah, it does. One of the things I think you're maybe hitting at a little bit is that there is the potential for a little bit of fear, or maybe even a lot of fear, right? But think back to the way the country was in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, even in the early 90s, how the country was towards LGBT folks. There was a lot of fear and a lot more, I think the community had a lot more worry about the ability to protect itself. Today, we're fortunate that we have teachers and we have administration and laws and all those kinds of protections that we can turn to. But it's going back to, do we have the courage that folks back then had, the folks that we are all fortunate to be on their shoulders, and all the changes that they brought about, the privileges that we have today? Do we want to be that kind of person for these industries? Can we be that kind of person for these industries? Going into the industries and saying, activism isn't just sitting at a nonprofit and making phone calls, or going out and providing services to folks in the LGBT
or
community.
posting on Twitter. That's not activism.
Right. Activism also can be, I'm going to be the first, or I'm going to be one of the first group of people that actually starts changing an industry, that starts changing the thinking of, like you said, misogynistic, homophobic, transphobic individuals. And sometimes all it takes is they insert that person or persons into that environment, and they start to hear and see stories that they didn't know existed, and it changes their hearts and minds by just being there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that it's a pretty significant consensus that the interpersonal relationships do so much to shift bigotry and hatred. And as we increase representation in the trades, you automatically are shifting the trades by saying the person I work next to every day just happens to be a gay man is going to change how someone perceives gay people. And to say the best mechanic I ever met was a woman is going to change how people perceive gender roles and achievements and abilities. So I think that, for LGBTQ people throughout history, just existing has been activism. It is pushing and saying, I deserve the right to be here. I deserve the right to be who I am, how I need to be. And so really getting into the trades is a form of activism. It's a form of, and, I want to take a moment to acknowledge that a lot of folks can't be out in the trades. Like, we have very little data about LGBTQ folks in the trades because it's not being funded. People aren't interested in this topic enough to put the funding there, but also people have to navigate their own safety in the trades in terms of their identity, their gender identity, their sexual orientation. So I'm not saying that everybody has to be out in the trades, but I think just being in the trades as an LGBTQ person, you're really changing and shifting the culture as a whole.
Sure. With that, what obviously the demand or the need for more people in the trades is going to help evolve it to be more LGBTQ, more inclusive and accepting. What other resources or tools are there for people who, they might have carved out a comfortable life for themselves. They don't like their salary. They don't like where they work. They would love to have another opportunity. What kind of support systems would that LGBTQ person have if they decide to go down the path of getting into the trades?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think there's a lot of, you have to still be pretty creative in finding those outlets for support if you're LGBTQ and interested in the trades. And that is everything from looking at, there's a lot of non-traditional employment pre-apprenticeship programs out there now. And granted, they often tend to be in larger cities, but still non-traditional employment for women. There's an organization in Seattle, there's one in New York, and those are really looking towards, they have teachers that identify as female, LGBTQ. So trying to kind of insulate yourself into a space that is already inclusive and fighting for inclusivity is a good way. Also making connections with nonprofits like Reckoning Trade Project. We have a monthly affinity group meeting where LGBTQ trade workers come and just talk about what's happening. So trying to build that community is another way to do it. And there's Pride at Work, which is an organization that's long-standing, been trying to advocate for LGBTQ people in the trades. So finding the nonprofits, also seeking out mentors, seeking out folks that are in the trades and saying, how'd you get into this? What did you do? And there's a lot of trades fairs. There's a lot of focus on trying to get people in the trades, increase apprenticeships. There's funding from the federal government. And so looking for those trades fairs, going and talking to employers and saying, what values do you hold? Do you have any diversity? Do you have representation racially, with sexual orientation, gender identity? And starting to have those conversations, even, you start to understand whether the employer is interested in these issues. And I think that finding a safe place that you want to start an apprenticeship program is similar in traditional education. It's worth the move. If you can find a place that you want to grow and develop with a company that you think matches your values, it's worth going and moving to where you can find that community and that support.
Sure. I'm curious, are you seeing a noticeable reduction in discrimination and increase in inclusion in the trades industries with the Supreme Court's decision to add worker protections for LGBTQ folks back in 2020?
That's kind of difficult. I would say yes, in some regards. And I think that the Black Lives Matter movement has really pushed that forward as well, saying that, just not paying attention to what's going on in the culture is no longer acceptable. But I do think that, especially when it comes to gender identity and sexual orientation in the trades, a lot of the culture is still really flagrant with its homophobia and transphobia, unfortunately, and really understanding how the Bostock opinion, which gave worker protections to trans and gay folks, it hasn't been, we haven't seen the precedent yet. We haven't seen the cases necessarily come down the line that say, continually misgendering someone is discrimination. So I think it's a little slow, but it's happening. I think the culture of the United States is going to shift the trades more quickly than the law necessarily. But that we have legal protections is absolutely going to help bolster the trades to be more inclusive.
Yeah, it does always seem to take some time for the culture to catch up with the law. But we were just wondering if after, we're almost 2 years into it now, we were wondering if that's starting to see those results yet.
A little bit. I will say, I think it's a little slow. We talked to a lot of companies about having a gender policy, about saying, what is your workplace policy for if someone is transgender? What bathroom do they get to use? What is HR going to do with their birth name versus their legal name or their chosen name? And kind of really trying to put in the ear of the trades, you need to get ahead of these issues with having workplace policies, just like you have anti-discrimination policies. And they need to be specific, because this gender identity discrimination looks different than other forms of discrimination. And employers really are having a hard time with, how do I discern what is a joke and what is discrimination when it comes to gender identity? And so we're really pushing for have those policies and those discussions before it becomes an HR issue.
Absolutely.
So would that be maybe the place that someone who is looking to go into the trades, who is looking for an employer, would that be one of the places where they could start by checking out a prospective employer and saying, what are your policies around this, as kind of a way to make sure that they're maybe not going into a company that potentially could be supportive of them if there is an issue?